But I think the biggest thing is brand buy-in. I've seen it on both sides. I've, had partners that have absolutely bought into the brand, and those are the best partners, right? You almost feel like they are in your team. They're just another remote team member. And then I've had the opposite where, I just kind of felt like everything was very transactional. And so that's not my preference for a marketing partner. Even if it is like SEO, or if it is something very, kind of technical, or it could be transactional. I still, that level of like them feeling like they are invested in your business is absolutely crucial.
Welcome to another episode of the Growth League podcast. I am your host, Caleb Clark, and on this show, we are learning from the unique experiences and perspectives of different marketing leaders, and then using that information to add value and provide support to other growing and current marketing leaders across industries. So I'm very happy to have my guest, Corryn Williams from Method Architecture. Welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm gonna kind of read a little bit about you to give our audience some more context, and really looking forward to this conversation. You are the Senior Director of Strategic Growth at Method Architecture. You oversee everything: the brand, marketing, client relations team, and as a marketer, you have a bunch of experience working within agency, in-house, small businesses, global brands. So a ton of experience, across a lot of different applications. It's this variety of experience that has helped Corryn to shape her ability to scale marketing strategies and achieve critical business goals. So obviously your experience is very well documented, and everyone is going to take a lot of value from this. So again, appreciate your time. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks.
So Corryn, I'm going to ask you a little bit about Method Architecture. Tell us about the business, what's your guys' vision. But before we get into that, give us a sense of, who are you outside of the role and of the office? Like, are you an avid hiker? Are you a professional bowler or something like that? Who is Corryn outside of work?
I'm actually shockingly good at bowling. So it's like a Midwest thing. We didn't have a thing to do in the winter but bowl. So I know how to bowl. But outside of work, I'm a mom. I have a little 18-month-old son. His name is Xavier. I'm a wife. On the weekends, we love to spend time outside. Living in San Antonio, it's so easy to just spend a lot of time outside, parks, going down to the Riverwalk. I also love coffee, so I like to go and visit local coffee shops, and do a little review of the coffee there. So yeah.
Like, do you document these reviews online? Do you have a blog or something?
I just do them on LinkedIn, and I do them. It's like, I call it coffee and cream. So then the cream is CRE for commercial real estate. So I do like a little update of what's going on in the city, and then like a rating on the local coffee shop. So
that's amazing. I'll definitely link to that in the show notes. I'm also a huge coffee fan. Myself and a few members of our team just went down to Colombia to visit some team members that we have down there. And we learned that the best coffee that comes out of that region, and the coffee region there, actually legally is meant to be exported, and it's not allowed to stay in the country. So the stuff in the country is like kind of the off cut, if you will, which I thought was pretty interesting. But I'm drinking coffee now. I don't know if you have one with you.
I have one as well.
All right, great. So Method Architecture, I've spent some time, looking at what you guys are working on and some of the projects you've done in the past, but give us a sense of what's the company all about? What problems do you solve for whom, and why are you guys, in your mind, best positioned to solve those problems?
Yeah, sure. So Method Architecture is a full service commercial architecture and interior design firm. Our tagline is ego-free architecture, and that just kind of, it's getting at how we deliver our projects, or the method in which we deliver our projects, which kind of is an ode to the name. We don't have partners' names on the door. We don't have, we're not named after, ABC company after somebody's name. It's about truly the process of architecture and delivering that to clients. and that experience should be client driven. And so that's just kind of the background, I guess, of how we approach architecture. We do a little bit of everything, industrial, retail, we do breweries and distilleries, which is a fun project type, mixed use retail, and then we actually do a lot of public and tribal work. We are a native owned firm.
That's awesome. From your experience in being there, what are some of the characteristics that define just a perfect client partner? Is there anything that you guys have tethered to in terms of yes to you and no to you, and here's why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our perfect client is equally collaborative. We want them to bring their experience, their needs, their wants to the table, and voice those opinions, give us feedback. The worst client for us would be for us to work through this process and then get to the end, and then they really had something at the beginning that they wished for and just didn't say it. And so communication is very key. So making sure that, just having that kind of open lines of communication from start to finish.
Yeah. How do you get that figured out in the early stages of, seeing if there's a fit? Because I think with that, a lot of times, someone can show up in one way, and then as it materializes and as work gets done, you start to see some of these things. Is there any tricks or tips that your team uses to really get a better sense of clarity on if this is going to be a fit before it starts?
Early on,
might be hard to figure out.
Yeah, I feel like early on is a hard one. I feel like mid project is probably where a lot of those start to come up. But maybe early on, maybe just like not responsive or truly maybe doesn't have an idea for what they're looking for, which isn't an issue. It's not always our client's job to know how to design a building, right? We work with a lot of small businesses, and so it is usually their first time, and so that's actually some of our favorite clients, because you're actually like kind of shepherding them through the process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What as a growing marketing leader, I imagine you have lots of different options for companies that you can associate with and work for. What intrigued you about Method? What attracted you there in the first place?
Yeah, so coming from kind of a big global corporate company, I was kind of looking for that opportunity for high growth, somewhere where you could, start and make an immediate impact. I feel like when you're kind of in the corporate ranks, there's a lot of process set in place, and there's a lot of, you're just kind of going through the motions. And while there's still room for change there, I think being in kind of a small company who's looking to really grow, that's exciting, right? As a marketer, that's what we want. We want to see that change, that being able to put campaigns together and see kind of the fruits of your labor actually come to life. So I think seeing that opportunity at Method was a big one. Also, just the culture was a big driver for me. I think this whole idea of ego-free, coming from agency life, corporate marketing, I think there's this disconnect on like whose idea, or it has to be this massive idea. So this idea of like ego-free just really resonated with me, not even from an architecture perspective. Yeah,
I mean that it's amazing how powerful ego is in different organizations, and what that does to stifle growth or stifle flow of ideas. And that's really cool. You've been there for, I think, just about 6 years now, and played various roles and sort of grew up with the organization. What currently defines your mandate? If you had to, kind of put it in a nutshell, what are you responsible for doing?
Elaborate a little bit more.
Well, like there's a lot of activities that come in the role of senior director of strategic growth. But when it all boils down, is there like one or two critical business objectives or overall mandates that you kind of keep your eyes on as the North Star for yourself in your role?
For sure. I mean, we absolutely have sales targets or business development targets. that we are tracking by market, by overall firm. So I would say like that's probably one of the bigger ones. And then I think there's obviously always some of the smaller KPIs that's, kind of brand awareness. And I think that depends too, right? So we have some markets where we have really great brand awareness, and then we have our smaller markets or new markets that we're still growing that. And so I think probably market by market, I have a little bit of a different approach or tactic, but yeah.
And then from a team leadership or management standpoint, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I have an awesome team of 4 people, and they are kind of spread out geographically, which is really helpful. But they focus on a multitude of different I would say they all have more of a generalist background, but each of them has a little bit of more of a specialty. So some of them are more heavy in business development, some of them are more kind of pure marketing focused.
Yeah, cool. When you first started at Method, was it part of the plan to sort of grow into different positions, or did that happen organically? And what experience sharing can you have can you share in terms of the ways of positioning yourself in a good way to kind of just naturally grow in rank and accountability?
Yeah, I would say, given the size of the company when I started, I think we were in, 30-ish people. We're now pushing 80. So at the time, it was a one person, one woman marketing team. So there really wasn't this like trajectory for growth. It wasn't like, I know that if I, work in this job, I'm going to move up to this one and to this one. So it was kind of creating that position and having that flexibility to let that role ebb and flow as the business grew and what it looked like. So, and it's so funny, like to think back about what my marketing team looked like 3 years ago, and I would never rebuild that same team. Like, it's just so funny. The business needs change. And so as a marketing leader, you have to be able to step back and say, do I still need the same? Are my needs still the same?
Yeah. You talk about in your bio there, experience in-house and experience on the agency side. What do you like better and why? I guess you have to say in-house now, but
yeah. I think I actually do. I feel like I left the agency world and I never went back. I do love the in-house part because I feel like you really are part of the business, right? You are ingrained. It is the only thing you're really focused on. And so with agency life, you can get a little bit scatterbrained with the different, company types that you're working in, although that keeps it fun and fresh as well. So.
Yeah. So this might be a tough question, but as a marketing leader, I want you to brag about yourself a little bit. What would you say your superpowers are that you bring to the job every day? And then on the other side, what are some areas of weakness that you just always constantly trying to improve or research on?
Sure. So I would say my strength is like creativity and intuition. I listen, but not just about what's happening in my department. It's listening kind of company wide and being able to take pieces and parts of that and pull them together, or pull people from different departments and say like, hey, I've heard you guys both talking about this. Like, could we find a solution or whatever? So I think that's probably my superpower strength. But then I would say on the flip side, something is, and I think a lot of marketing leaders struggle with this, is perfectionism, right? So progress versus perfection, and when do you let it go? And especially going from this kind of one person team to then building and having a bigger team, you can't do it all. And it's kind of funny. I've started to realize, and as also talking with other people who have been this kind of went from being a single, kind of marketing department to growing the team. The brand voice, it started kind of as yours. And so you have to kind of break that apart and welcome other voices in and figure out what that then sounds like and what it is and what it looks like. So I think that's been a fun and kind of challenging thing as the company's grown, that finding what our voice is.
Yeah. And is that a shared challenge amongst your whole team that you're thinking about on a day-to-day, and or is it a self-contained challenge that exists, but maybe that doesn't permeate to the team?
I think it's there right now. I think I know it exists, but I think it's just something too that it's just kind of ebbing and flowing. I don't think it's something we're super focused on, but it is. I'm noticing the change now. I think we're like right in it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What are maybe like the top 2 or 3 different customer segments you guys approach, and what are 1 or 2 examples of how you approach those different segments differently within your marketing system?
For sure. So I would say marketing segments. So like commercial real estate developers, or the commercial real estate industry is kind of one of the bigger ones. And so I guess if that's what we're talking about, segments or sectors. So commercial real estate is a big one. Like construction, although they all kind of fall under this bigger kind of umbrella, there are like sub-segments within each one. So the construction industry, general contractors, and then we have this whole kind of public sector, which is it's approached very differently. So our public sector work and our federal work is all very much, some of the tactics are, RFQs, proposals. It's much more kind of a black and white process. And then when you're looking at the kind of commercial real estate, commercial development space, it's a mix of really kind of that's really the more client relations side. It's a people business, and all business is people business, right?
Yeah.
So we are a service company. We provide customer service that outputs a building. So that's kind of what we look at it.
What's the biggest bucket that you represents the biggest area of growth or business for you guys?
Biggest area of growth? That's a good question. I would say it's probably 50-50. I think there's still opportunity within each realm that we've not really pursued. I think we've just kind of scratched the surface on some areas in each.
Okay. Yeah. We, as it relates to, setting a North Star or a lighthouse in terms of measurable success, is there, tell us a little bit about how you and your team align to a scoreboard or to a set of critical KPIs, and what are the 1 or 2 that, besides revenue and new client acquisition, how do you as a team come together at the end of a quarter or a period and say, we're on track or we're not on track?
Yeah. So we have a firm, like a senior leadership meeting that happens every fall. And so out of that, we come out with our firm goals for the following year.
Okay.
After that, our marketing team gets together and we have our own summit about basically how we are going to support the firm-wide goals. And then we come up with our kind of like KPI project list. So we have a list of, 4 or 5 different projects throughout the year that we document, kind of put together the plan for how we're going to implement. And then we have weekly and kind of monthly check-ins on those.
Okay. That makes good sense. It seems very organized. On the topic that comes up a lot around budget allocation, and it doesn't have to be applicable to method, or it could be, applicable to some of your other experiences. For you personally, when you have an established budget and you have a brand new upcoming quarter or period and a blank piece of paper, how do you kind of wrap your head around, okay, how do I divide this up appropriately from a high level?
So I'm a big planner. I like to have everything kind of planned out. So I actually look at everything at the beginning of the year, plan it out, basically what we're going to be spending, and then work to that. So I would say, I think the key though there is flexibility. Things will change, the market will change. I think COVID was I think it served all of us a big lesson in flexibility. I remember, I had basically just completed putting together our big marketing plan, and I essentially balled it up and threw it in the trash instead of starting over.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. And so I think, just being able to, as long as your organization allows it, flexible with that and being able to pivot quickly.
So you lean pretty heavily on the data then as a team to make reallocation decisions in the middle of a period, you're saying?
Yeah. And I think, if we're saying this didn't work or this isn't working, like obviously give it the shot that it needs, right? But don't trust your gut.
Yeah. Well, so much to be said for that.
Yeah.
Especially it's difficult to do that when we're looking at data and black and white indicators all the time. Understanding that it's a balance is a good reminder. As a marketing leader, one that's growing and experiencing new challenges all the time, is there anything you can point to as a source of inspiration or learning from you? Is it other people? Is it different literature? How do you draw or create inspiration in your role?
Yeah, I would definitely say find somebody like a buddy. So I have somebody that I kind of work with. She is a very similar level at an engineering firm. And we have like a monthly brain share where we just like bounce ideas off of each other. And it's nice because our industries are similar enough, or our companies are similar enough where a lot of the ideas that we have for each other are very applicable. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been really helpful. Also having a mentor, somebody above you that can kind of help guide you, I think is super important. I've had plenty of mentors in my career so far, and we'll absolutely have more going forward.
Yeah.
And then I would say find something that, like, I think I've done a couple leadership programs and things, and maybe that's not for everybody, but finding something that is just kind of slightly outside of what you do to kind of stretch that brain muscle, right? You want to try and find a different passion, or it brings about creativity in a lot of different ways that maybe would be unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I share most of those same tactics or strategies. It's mostly based around finding people in similar industries or similar situations and just kind of like either adding value through experience sharing or just asking really good questions and being on this kind of unending thirst journey for growth. That's cool. As a team, when you guys get together in those summits and you're kind of building out your plan to meet the organizational objectives, what are some of the most common challenges that you and your team have to like suit up for and battle, specifically in your industry, in your geo? What are things that seem to be evergreen challenges that you've either found the solution for, or you're chipping away at it?
Yeah. I think for us is specifically in kind of the architecture, engineering, construction industry. Obviously the proposals is a huge part of the marketing team's role in putting those together and dissecting them. I think bandwidth comes up a lot, and I hear this from other companies and other marketing leaders as well, is like, how do you communicate that to leadership, or to the managers, the project managers who are coming to you saying, hey, I need this, and you're looking at your team like there's only so many of us, what are we going to do? So coming up with a way that it's easy to communicate what your bandwidth is, do you have room for this, and kind of calculate that. So we've come up with like a little spreadsheet calculator that basically says like, this equates to this bandwidth, we have this much, and it allows the teams from all offices to see like, okay, marketing has little bandwidth, we can't bring them, or it just kind of creates this level of transparency that I think is really helpful.
Good for you for doing that. There's countless marketing teams suffer in silence a lot of times because they don't commit to capacity planning or documenting that. And it just becomes, in so many organizations, it's just like, well, dump this on marketing, they'll figure it out. It's kind of a black hole. So that's really good. And that's a strong leadership trait. I don't know if that was initiated by you, but, suffering in silence is a big thing as it relates to capacity. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys work with external partners, but there's a topic that gets brought up in terms of like, yeah, you're managing and inspiring and motivating your current team, but how do those things get extended to external partners? Do you have a kind of a playbook that you use on finding, managing, working with, collaborating with people external to the organization?
Yeah, I have always found external partners, so agency partners or kind of freelance partners. Obviously trust is the pinnacle there, right? So they have to trust you, you have to trust them. But I think the biggest thing is brand buy-in. I've seen it on both sides. I've had partners that have absolutely bought into the brand, and those are the best partners, right? You almost feel like they are in your team. They're just another remote team member. And then I've had the opposite where, I just kind of felt like everything was very transactional. And so that's not my preference for a marketing partner. Even if it is like SEO, or if it is something very, kind of technical, or it could be transactional, I still, that level of like them feeling like they are invested in your business is absolutely crucial.
Totally. Someone recently told me this kind of a nice saying where it's like the ideal partnership scenarios is where it's client plus agency versus the problem, instead of, client plus problem versus the agency, or vice versa. And I just think that says so much, and that you're going into this sort of battle together versus the thing, right? So that's cool. Sometimes, and I don't know if it's the case with your organization, but you guys go through your marketing team summit, and then you kind of present the plan or defend the plan. How do you and your team go about getting buy-in or support from different departments that don't touch marketing, or C-suite people that they're not spending their day doing that? How do you guys approach that? Because it's critical that it's holistic and integrated, and a challenge for many marketing leaders and teams.
Yes. So I would say that this, on the kind of being more integrated in the teams for us, has been a challenge. And, whether that's because of geographic restrictions or whatever, having, wherever my team sits, I've kind of split the teams up so they sit in their team meetings. So we try to integrate into the teams more, so that there's just that face time, they're building that relationship. And they just start to build that understanding of, what is marketing and business development? What are we doing? I'm also just very fortunate at the C-suite level, or the kind of leadership level. I have less of that to deal with, of the kind of trying to prove, that we have worth here, or that like what we're doing is valuable. And I've also seen the opposite of that in organizations, and it's just such a waste of time.
Waste of time. Yeah, that's right. It's so nice to feel that support, and it gives you more freedom and safety to do your thing. Is there anybody on your team that deserves a bit of a shout out for something they've done recently, or you might want to name them all, but like how?
Yes, all of them. I am very, very lucky. I have I have like a superstar team. I would say, oh man, do I have to only give one single shout out?
No, you can, no.
So we literally, back to proposals, that's a big part of our kind of role in marketing, is getting out these kind of large 70 to 100 page proposals based on the projects. And I think recently we put out like 4 in a week, which is insane. Their timesheets were nuts, but we're recovering now. So
little break for everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's been definitely a lesson learned as a leader. And I think, we talked about it before, is this kind of measuring of bandwidth, right? So, you have to also kind of have the pulse of your team, and how are they doing? Are they because you don't want them to burn out, right? And that was definitely one of those instances where I think we all flew too close to the flame, and we're like, okay, we need a break, right? So I think that was a good kind of lesson learned for me as a manager, to be like, okay, what could we have said no to? We should have said no somewhere in there. So
interesting. And do you lean on those capacity documents or visuals to aid you in the times where you got to say no?
We do. And we knew when we were over our capacity number, right? And it was red and it was telling us no. And I even wrote on those spreadsheets so everyone could see, like, send marketing wine, because they're going to need it.
Cool. Good for you. Yeah. Advocating on behalf of the team.
Yeah.
I have a question about the RFQs and the RFPs and the, big meaty documents put together. Is there anything else in your marketing mix that you use to sort of subtly or subconsciously influence the decision maker that's receiving that response from you? So there's like top of mindedness, because I've been in scenarios in the past where a big chunk of their marketing activity is RFQ and RFP based, but I'm curious and a lot of our audience is in the same boat. Is there anything that you do to support the delivery of an RFP? Maybe it's like some top of mind awareness campaigns, or how does that work?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything. I mean, within the RFP, obviously there's storytelling, and we're trying to create a narrative that, so it helps us stand out when they are looking at 20, 30 of these sitting on a table. And obviously the delivery of it, the look and feel of it must, it has to look nice. But I would say outside of that, no. Have I thought about geofencing and other fun, like more kind of digital guerrilla tactics? Absolutely. Have I done it yet? Not yet.
That's all right. Thinking about it is one thing. That's good.
Yeah.
Topic about work-life balance comes up a lot, and I subscribe to the idea of work-life integration, feeling fulfilled by the work you're doing, the team you're doing it with. What are some so regardless of how you look at it, balance or integration, what are some of the practices you do to create that balance? Because you're managing a team, you're being accountable to a set of objectives, you care about the organization, where they're going, and then you have an 18-month-old as well. So I want to talk about that personal side. What's your playbook on that?
Yeah. I think just always remembering or knowing that I'll take a step back. I'm very fortunate that Method, we have a ton of flexibility, right? So we have hybrid work schedule, we have unlimited vacation. So like we have the mechanisms to kind of have this work-life integration. And I think just being aware of your mental state, when you're stressed out, when you kind of, again, flew too close, but and making sure that you are intentional about taking break time. And even if that's just going for a walk at lunch or taking a walking meeting, it's super imperative that you are just in tune with yourself and how you're feeling and not ignoring that, because it's really hard to get out of that burnout state without taking some type of crazy leave or wanting to quit your job the next day. And so I, like with my team specifically, and just giving that example, like the 4 proposals, they worked crazy hours. I basically told each of them, you guys need to find time in the next week or 2 to take some time off. You can go sit on your couch and watch Netflix for an entire day, I don't care, but like you need to just take some time for you. And so I think just being hyper aware of that and managing yourself. So much of it is self-inflicted. I find myself all the time, just like, you did this.
Totally. Yeah, it is totally a self-sabotage most times. Are you involved in the hiring process on the marketing team for different roles, like exclusively? So there's a lot of different approaches to hiring. What has worked for you in the past, and how do you approach that?
And specific to hiring, like questions I like to ask, like what are you?
Yeah, either questions or the process, or how early you start the process, or ways of vetting. It's such a kind of not a gray area, but there's so many different ways to skin a cat, I think. And I'm curious about, in your past, how have you gone about that function?
Yeah. And I think there's been different ways. I think a lot of people, at least in my industry, look for people with experience in my industry, and I disagree with that. I actually want somebody with a fresh perspective. And so when, typically if I'm hiring, the last 2 hires I made, well, one came, we acquired a company last year, and so their marketing director came on with us, and she's still here. She's amazing. So I would say, like, when I actually get to go out to market and try and find somebody, I'm usually not looking for somebody with AEC experience. I want somebody with new ideas. I'll even look at like pseudo industries. So like, did they work as a reporter in, the news, journalism background, writing background? You can write, you can do a lot of things. So I love somebody with writing skills. But then I think when I'm looking at them from a culture fit perspective, we kind of have this thing internally, they have to be humble, hungry, and smart. And so it's Patrick Lencioni's,
Yeah.
it's the ideal team player. But so those three characteristics, and that's very kind of easy to pick out in an interview. And I think one of the questions I like to ask is kind of asking about failure. So, and it's not about tell me a time about when you failed. It's saying it's a year from now and you have failed in this position. What happened? And so I want to hear from them, and I'll usually hear moments of humility or this kind of hunger, or you kind of get those ideas come out. And so
yeah,
one of my favorite questions.
So when somebody gets through the interview process and they come onto the team, how do you set them up for success as it relates to them understanding what they got to do, what they're accountable for, what is, what does measurement look like? How do you support them once they're on the job day one?
Yeah, so this past time, at least, I've gone and we did like a couple days onboarding. And so, yeah, spent this day kind of going through our company's growth plan, vision plan, then the marketing plan, how that supports that. And then kind of, so we start out here, we end here with their role, and then doing check-ins, one-on-one check-ins within the first 30 days, and then every month after that. And then obviously with the wider team, they're doing weekly check-ins and stand-ups and things. So
cool.
Yeah.
Have you, talking about Lencioni, have you guys read or as a team or individually read the book, Five Dysfunctions of a Team?
Yeah, our leadership team read that. I think that was the first one we read. Then we read Ideal Team Player, and then we started getting into some of the Working Genius stuff.
Yeah, we have some recent experience kind of reading that and working that as a team, and just this realization that results at the top of the pyramid never come if people don't feel safe, if they're not given a platform to disagree and commit, and so just super powerful. The other thing I was going to maybe recommend or ask is, have you ever done Clifton Strengths with your team?
I have not. I did that. So I was a leadership program in college, and we used to do all of those different, kind of leadership strengths finders. I have not done that with my team, but that would be another.
It's really cool because, like personality tests, that's okay. That's nice or whatever. But strengths is, especially when you have a team, this unique opportunity to understand what are people's superpowers and then educate each other on what their colleagues' superpowers are, and then tackle a problem by borrowing somebody else's superpower. So just when you talk about your team and kind of the approach you take, I think it would be interesting. So I'll tell you more about that offline.
Yeah, for sure.
What were you going to say you did?
Oh, I'll say we did the Working Genius as a team. And so that was kind of fun. You get to see like basically a project process and like who fits where your gaps are, which was interesting. Why some people sit at the beginning of a process and they're like the big idea thinkers. Then you have like your people who are like, let's get it done type people. Yeah. So it was interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk to you about this stuff for a long time, but I have two more questions that, again, keep coming up a lot. So I want to ask them. Okay. The first one is, you alluded to the question you asked in the interview process, like looking out over a year, if you failed, what does that mean? And what would your plan be? But as a group, as a team, let's imagine you presented a quarterly plan to meet the business objectives and you're all excited about it and it just totally flops. Do you guys have experience going through that together as a team? And what is your ways of working on the heels of a scenario like that?
I don't know that we have experience as a team thus far. The team is
you just hit home runs all the time.
Definitely not that either, but I would say as a team, we probably don't have that experience, given that we're kind of newly together. But I would say that happens in micro moments every day, right? So like there are little, this piece of something didn't work, or, that's what feedback's all about. And so I think just if you create a culture within your team of consistent feedback, nothing ever seems like this big, like, oh man, we really bombed this one. It's just like, okay, what's next? And I think if you keep that mindset, it feels a lot healthier. And it's about progress and not this like, we're done.
Yeah,
You're never done.
exactly. Yeah. You say what's next. I guess that's the powerful word there, or words. Last question is that there's a lot of people in our audience that are, brand new junior level marketing coordinators. And if you could kind of reverse the time, what are some of the things you would offer as advice or ideas or suggestions to these people?
Yeah. I would say, listen, just ear to the ground, ask questions. They may seem silly, but honestly, the best way to build trust with your supervisor, with other leaders, is to ask questions, because then, if they feel like you don't care, you're not interested, they're not going to give you more projects or more things. So ask so many questions. Get involved with an industry organization, continuing education. Yes, you got that degree. Yes, you may feel like you finished, but you're never done learning. So continue that. There's always a new skill. There's always something new, especially in marketing. There's always something new coming out. So if you can be the kind of champion on your team for that, that's a great way to provide value.
Yeah. I mean, based on what I learned from you today and what we talked about, I think your team should be very happy that they have a leader like you, and the organization should be happy that, how much you clearly care and you seek to understand. I think that's one thing I pick up from you, is that seek to understand rather than try to be understood. You know what I mean? It's like very different. And so I think that both parties I mentioned should be very happy. And it was great talking to you. It kind of flew by, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate your experience, Share.
Well, thank you. This is a lot of fun. My first time doing it. So
Really? Well, you're a natural. I think you should do more.
thank you.
Thanks so much, Corryn.
Okay.